All right. Well, there you go. Eagles and Jags coming up Sunday, 4:05. Originally scheduled to be the nighttime game. And then NBC said, hell no. We don't want these two teams playing on primetime. To discuss that and everything else, longtime Eagles beat writer for NJ.com. Now it's like, man, we got to get him to cover more than the Eagles. So he definitely has an emphasis on the Eagles, but also the Giants and the Jets, as the Jets played last night. Chris Franklin of NJ.com joins us right now. What's up, Chris?
Nothing much, man. I'm so glad they changed that game. You have no idea. You know, but yeah.
I do, yeah.
With the Jaguars. Oh, no.
So Chris, once upon a time, when I was ending working at the Fanatic and I went to WIP, so this is like 2016, I tried to start a website called PHLYFootballTalk.com. And I did it, but then when I started at WIP and I had kids, I'm like, it's just too much work to keep this going. And I wish I would have kept it going, but I didn't. Chris Franklin was one of my young writers that was trying to get into the business that did a great job. And Chris, I remember thinking about you. This dude's going to work in the business. And now look at you. You're like an old veteran reporter. I see white in the beard.
Yeah, man. It feels a long time, man. But yeah, I gotta give you a lot of credit, man, because you kept me going for a while. So I was getting down there, and yeah, man, when you kept that site going, and you're a great editor too. You were a great editor as well too. So I thank you from the bottom of my little Urkel heart. I thank you so much for that, man.
Of course. I haven't seen you. I've talked to you, but I haven't seen you. We were at the Super Bowl in 2022. We went to the media event. We did the bus ride together to the media event. And since then, I mean, it was a great Super Bowl. They narrowly won. They start out the season 10-1. And everybody's thinking, well, crap, we're going back to the Super Bowl this year. And then a historic collapse. And now 5-2. How do you feel about the team right now? Looking from it from a guy that's watched this team your entire life, and now you're covering them professionally. Does this feel like that they're back on track and this team is what we thought they were at some point last year?
Yeah, and it's getting scary because they're going on another streak again. Remember last year, 10-1. Start looking at Super Bowl covers, Super Bowl flights, like who could they play and everything. Next thing you know, you're in Tampa Bay walking out the tunnel, like this thing is really over. The heck, y'all feel like you were 10-1, but now I look at this year, I think they better be win four straight after this week. And you look at the landscape of the NFC, and there's only one team you really think is dominant, the Detroit Lions. Everybody else has serious questions. So you're looking at them like, if the Lions get in the slump, maybe somebody knocks them out. Maybe the Vikings pull a rabbit out their hat again. All of a sudden now, you win the East, which you should, even with the Commanders and Jay Daniels doing well. You're the one seed. You're the team that is everything comes through Philly, and you should win here all the time. So yeah, I feel like this team's back on track. I think they found their formula. I think they found their identity, as much as maybe Nick and some of the other people there think like identity's too overlooked. Yeah, they found their identity, and they're going streaking.
It's interesting you bring up, and we'll talk about the Eagles more in a second, but when you talk about the conference, the Lions 100% are the best team in the NFC right now. Now, it's also the first day of November. We know a lot changes between now and when the playoffs start, but also they could end up being that number one seed that gets the bye week and then comes off the bye week, and you're playing a hot team and you're a little bit flat because you had the bye week. We've seen it too many times with that number one seed, and they don't have the playoff experience. I know they were in it last year, but still, like, this could be one of these years where a 2 seed, a 3 seed, or that hot team entering the playoffs ends up getting the NFC Championship game because the Lions get knocked out early. So I agree with you 100%. This is a really wide open conference. You just said the identity of the team. And I think we all wanted this offense to immediately have an identity and immediately to be humming and running on all cylinders. And probably looking back, it was unrealistic to think that. Jalen's still trying to figure stuff out. Kellen Moore's trying to figure out, all right, like, what do I really have? How do I use them the best? Because you can study film and you can watch from another team's perspective, but until you get in there every day, it's totally different. So what impressed me the last 3 weeks was, hey, we're going to start to run the offense through Saquon Barkley, but also we're not going to stop giving him the ball like against Cincinnati just because it's not working. And they kept feeding him, even though it was getting 2 or 3 yards a chunk. And then they said, hey, we're going to beat you over the top. We're going to let Jalen make wise decisions. So to me, this has been very smart play by the players. Jalen hasn't turned the ball over. And Chris, Fangio and Kellen Moore have really, really started to come into their own as coordinators of this team. It like the complaints I had earlier in the year about Fangio not making adjustments during game, and the complaints that I had about Kellen Moore, like what exactly is he doing? Man, it feels good right now. It feels like these guys are starting to figure things out.
Yeah, it really does. And I felt guilty of this trap too, where the first couple of weeks where you're looking like, okay, there's new systems, especially with defense, with a lot of younger guys, a lot of rookies that are playing in high leverage spots, second year players. It takes a while for that, especially that system to get used to it. And I would love for every time we look at a box, they show the camera box of Vic talking. I love if there was a microphone because you can see like just to hear what he's saying, because it would have been interesting to see that. But the more and more you see that they're getting acclimated to it, the only thing the pass rush is finally catching up in a way. It's not getting as much sacks as they should have because they're getting the pressure, they're getting the hurries. That's come. You wait for okay, the turnovers start to come. Maybe that starts to come, and now you all of a sudden you have a you have a top tier defense right now. Technically, right now you have statistically, you're like, huh? And I think you can this case they do it. Like I thought before the season, as long as this unit was 15 or higher, that's all they need because you have the offensive pieces. You don't
Right.
you know be Gannon like without the sacks. The Gannon led one without the sacks. Then offensively, you look at this thing and they needed it beforehand. The gravity of the offense went toward AJ Brown. It went all the focus on him, and then we're seeing the Fangio type defense where they're not going to let him beat him deep. Yeah, it makes sense. Everything's cyclical in this league. Give the ball to Saquon Barkley, let him pound it down the field, get chunks 5, 6, and all of a sudden you're not putting Jalen Hurts and the rest of the offense in situations where it's second and 13, second and 11 with the wide receiver screen because we keep seeing that happen, stuff like that. So I think when you put it on that, you're opening more space for Brown, for Smith, for Calcaterra as of the moment right now, guys like
Yeah.
that. And this offense is like, oh, this is what we expected. And that the perfect thing in before the year started as well too. When you saw the bye week come in week 5, you're like, this is our early bye. That was the best thing that happened to this team because it gave them pause. They had to look at everything and go, you know what? Yeah, we need to change some things, and we're starting to see those changes come to fruition.
That's a great point. I actually hadn't, because you're right. When you look at the schedule at the beginning of the season, you want it pretty much halfway through or maybe even a little bit later so you can get rested and you can get ready for the playoff run or whatever. It really was they're 3-0 since the bye. And I know that it was the Browns and the Giants, but the offenses look different. So you had mentioned like Jalen, right? And him not turning the ball over. Kind of feels like we're getting back to the 2022 season. If you remember, I remember talking to Jalen Hurts. Ike and I sat down with him at training camp. And I had said to him, like you play great this year. You're going to make yourself a lot of money. And he shook his head. He's like, yeah, I know what's at stake. I know that I know exactly where I am. I know there's a lot of people that are questioning whether or not I'm good enough to be somebody that matters in the NFL as far as a quarterback. And what you saw over that year was that he went from this being a run offense and everything needs to go through running and Jalen needs to run a little bit. By the end of the year in the Super Bowl, he had developed as a passer. He was confident. He didn't turn the ball over. He maneuvered around very well in the pocket. And you look at that Kansas City game, he threw the ball confidently down the field. He was great. He developed as a passer. I didn't think he could do that. And then you saw him take steps back last year. For me, Jalen Hurts, the passer, needs the confidence. And last year, the blitz, the rush, he had lost all confidence. He wasn't stepping up. He wasn't throwing the ball. I've seen the last 2 weeks a confident Jalen Hurts again. The ball that he threw to Devontae Smith, and he throws a good deep ball. Step up, confident, didn't think about it. Boom, let it fly. And Devontae made a great catch. It was a good throw. It was a really good throw. That Jalen can win a Super Bowl. That Jalen can get this team back to what was in 2022.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing was the blitz. Teams started adjusting, like they started adjusting, stopping the RPOs, and then it's all like, let's bring some extra pressure, and that was the biggest bugaboo against his game. Now all of a sudden he's working with Kellen Moore. They have an option to throw out for these things. Like you may see like a receiver doing like a quick curl or a slant, what have you, to do that. But Jalen's doing a really good job feeling comfortable with it. And now his eye level is not looking as much. It still happens from time to time. It's not looking as much going, oh no, I see this defensive lineman. I see this, I'm going to get sacked, what have you. He looks comfortable in the pocket. He's stepping up and he's throwing. And we've seen the only thing he needs to work on, in my opinion, is only his intermediate game. And that's starting to come around too.
Yeah.
Getting those, when it comes to those digs and everything else, and you work in the middle of the field, he's starting to work with that a little bit. And you're right. When you look at the confidence, when he's confident, when he knows he has his offensive line and set and ready to go, he feels good. And the one stat I remember seeing there, he's in the top 10 in terms of when he has a clean pocket. And this team, they've had a lot of injuries in terms of in terms of the offensive line. It's a lot of tough because you think like, okay, this is one of the top 2, 3 offensive lines in the league. They've had their issues at times this year. You got to do
Yeah.
right guard. You got your left tackle still, Joe Malala still has a hamstring injury. So it's been a lot of moving parts and seeing a little bit of pressure here and there. But when you have games like last week, when everything's clicking, he's still that quarterback. He just has to worry about the rush, and we're starting to see him feel more comfortable. You start to see him take more chances because he's got a clean pocket. So the 2 and 2 go hand in hand. Confidence in the offensive line go hand in hand, and you get offensive line, got to get more confidence over the top.
Slay and Goddard did not practice yesterday. The feel to me is Goddard needs another week. Slay, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But when you look at it, it's not like, Goddard obviously is good, although they've underutilized them over the years. But before you'd say with Slay, you'd be like, all right, well, that's a loss. Chris, I don't know, man. This secondary, these young guys in the secondary, from DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell looks like an absolute stud. Blankenship has really developed into a good player. All of a sudden, when you look at this depth in the secondary, man, you have players that are going to be here for a long time with Mitchell, and DeJean just looks like, hey, you put me out there, I'll play wherever. Like, I'm good. I'll cover out. I'll be a safety. I'll be nickel, whatever. It's exciting. It's exciting to have young players emerging because they're only going to get better. Like, if anything, like, I think we know what the offense is capable of. I didn't know what the defense was capable of. And you're seeing these young players really perform. Shout out to Nakobe Dean, by the way, because I didn't believe Nakobe Dean would ever be anything after the last couple of years. He's been really, really good. So these young Eagles defenders are making me feel great about the defense.
I remember having a personnel guy tell me around the draft back when the Eagles took him that they thought that he may have been a one contract type guy. He's not playing like a one contract guy at all. He's playing a guy and they let him play more downhill. They let him do what he did best when he was at Georgia. And surprise, surprise, he's doing what he did at Georgia. He's shooting gaps. They're letting him blitz more in between the tackles, and he's getting effective pressure. And the one thing that I think the biggest thing I saw from him in terms of questions was coverage for him. When the Bengals, I think it was Moss, they put him out, split him out. They had Dean 1-on-1 on the outside, and he stopped it. That was a huge step in terms of his game. And I thought you see him playing well, him and Zach Vaughn. And then when you look at Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, I know it's easier for a defensive back to come in as opposed to like say a safety, quarterback, what have you, and get in there. I didn't think they would be playing this well this soon. Look, Mitchell has no fear whatsoever. He'll talk trash and he'll let you know in terms of that. The fact that you had at times you had him singled up against Jamar Chase, you see him go against some of the other top wide receivers. He has a thing. I love his
No
recovery
fear.
speed, no fear whatsoever. And you think a lot of times you see, say like Terry Arnold, when he gets beat, he starts to flail, he starts getting panic and starts trying to grab and got if Mitchell gets beat off the line, he's got a recovery speed. He's in position. He's getting it. He's getting pass deflections. Some of them should eventually become interceptions, but that happens with that. And the Gene, I look at him and I think that's the tough. I think that's the more impressive thing for him starting. For him starting those last couple of weeks because A, you're coming off an injury. B, you're trying to catch up and get used to the system. And then all of a sudden, the slot corner, as you know, is the toughest thing to do because you got to talk to the other cornerbacks, you got to talk to the linebackers, talk to safeties, and you're playing a lot of space. And he's doing an extremely good job locking up guys in the slot. And we saw Jamar Chase, the Bengals did the smart thing because you got Darius Slay, you got Mitchell. Okay, yeah, let's put Jamar Chase on DeJean and see what happens. And he's did a good job there. So yeah, they got a very good future. You can't forget Keely Ringo too. Keely
Yeah.
Ringo's still playing good. They have a plan there in case say Slay leaves in the offseason, which could happen as well too with that number that's coming up. They have a guy that can slide in right now and play well, or they can draft a guy. I think Ringo though is a good option there. He's physical and he's got the speed, so they're set at that position for a very long time.
Howie with a couple of Great draft picks. And then Bond, what a stat, Howie Roseman steal, getting Bond on a 1-year contract. Dude's all over the field. You can't, like, sometimes stats can be misleading because guys, somebody's got to make the tackle. Somebody's going to make the tackle. You can compile stats. This dude, all over the field, all over the field. It's been a great signing by Howie.
Yeah, yeah. And it's one of the things where I wonder if they went to say, you know what? Hey, we like you here for a couple of years. What's it? Nah, man, I see what I can do. No, I'm going to freeze. I want my money right now.
Yeah.
No. So, but the way he's come, like he really has turned into the Van Ginkel. The way Vic Fangio used Van Ginkel last year, this is his Van Ginkel. The fact you can use him on the edge. There's some packages that I think we haven't, I know we haven't seen yet, where you can use him. He can line up in all over the field. You can use an edge rusher. Is he blitzing? Is he dropping back in coverage? Which you're like, okay, wait, he was an edge rusher prior to that. But then you look back at his time in Wisconsin and you see his ability to be in coverage and work in space. He could do that as well too. But the thing I like the most about him is he's a sure tackler. The guy, okay, if it gets right in front of him, 9 times out of 10 he's going to make the stop and not allow yards after the catch. So he's been playing lights out, and you're trying to find, okay, this is too good. He's playing really well. Those young guys are playing. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter are playing more effective. I mean, Nolan Smith is playing a lot.
Playing great. Yep.
Who's gonna be the one? Like, you're looking around like, oh well, there's Bryce Huff. He's getting a little bit better rushing, but there's still issues there. But that's the only weak link you got in this defense, and they're relatively young. It's crazy.
Defense looks legit. Chris Franklin, NJ.com. His handle on social media, C Franklin News. Not C like SEE, the letter C. Franklin News. Chris, good stuff, man. We'll have you on again soon. I appreciate you jumping on.
I appreciate it. It's always great talking to you, man. Thank you so much.
All right, Chris. There he is. Chris Franklin, NJ.com.
We all silly like the mayor.